And a good Sunday morning to you. Thank you for watching Beyond the Headlines. Not in my backyard. The plans to make a stretch of land on Mar Boulevard open to changes and business is shot down by a very vocal group of residents. The latest push for the project came when the City of Laredo hired able city urban planners to discuss the possibility of an overlay project in that part of town more than a year ago. Well, since then, 3 town hall meetings were held with members of the company explaining to residents what the overlay would or would not do for their properties. Now, that did not do the trick for residents living between Candlewood and Fenwick on Mar Boulevard. They're hoping to keep all zoning requests at bay with or without an overlay. Eventually, Councilmember Ruben Gutierrez Jr. motioned to do away with the issue at the latest city council meeting, and the motion passed, however, without overlay protections. Able city planners warn that future developments could be open to other standards already seen, for example, in nearby businesses. That's our first discussion this morning, but first let me introduce our panel. Starting to my far left, KGNS political contributor Sergio Mora.
Good morning.
KGNS anchor and investigative reporter and now podcaster Mindy Caso, and KGNS general manager Luis Vierra.
That's it.
Just the boss of us.
That's it. That's no podcast here, no political contributor, nothing.
Mindy, I know this is your specialty, so I have to ask, because I still don't know that I understand what an overlay is. What does that mean?
Okay, and it is a little hard for some to understand what it is because the name is just kind of elusive there, an overlay project. But basically what it is that it is going to be a set of rules or guidelines that residents themselves are able to custom dictate when it is created. So the resident of this stretch of land between Candlewood, which is right the street by Mary Help, all the way to Fenwick, which is the street near right next to the church. That particular stretch of land, those residents there like the nostalgic feel of their property, of that stretch, and they do not want any businesses or any homes or properties to be converted through zoning changes. But what an overlay does is that it protects residents of a stretch of land for that instance when maybe sometime in the future a zoning request gets approved. If it does get approved, then the developer or the property owner would have to follow these customized rules that were put in place. So, for instance, if a zoning were to get approved and there was an overlay and customized rules were put in place, those customized rules could be, okay, you have to keep your signage at this level, you can't have any LED signs, your landscaping has to be a certain look to it. You can't change the facade of your building. So an overlay sets the guidelines for what would for future instances. What happened was that the residents didn't want an overlay because they just don't want any zoning. But this doesn't stop that from happening. This is just, an overlay is just an insurance plan for that one day that it could happen in the future. Because, for instance, it did happen. It happened a couple of councilmen ago did approve a zoning change, and that's why there's a coffee shop there, and that's why there is an attorney's office there, because the zoning did go through. Now, the current council members, which is Ruben Gutierrez and Vanessa Perez, both said that while they are in office, they will not allow a zoning change to occur. But they're only going to be in office a certain amount of time, and then after that, somebody else will be in office.
So basically, what's happening is that there's a demand to commercialize that
There's been several requests.
Offices, law offices,
exactly.
Restaurants.
Yeah, some of the property owners there see the potential of their property. It's very visible, so why not make some money off of it?
Obviously, you have to be sensitive to the fact that may be somebody's house, and that they may not have the ability to relocate or go anywhere else. So you have to be sensitive to that, right? But as people exit the area, if I have a house on Mar Boulevard and I'm ready to move and I want to sell my property, nobody's going to buy my house as a house. Nobody's going to buy that property to move in. And make it a home, right?
Exactly.
I'm probably going to have a better chance of selling it to a doctor or to an attorney or to a restaurant or an accounting office.
Yeah.
And so that is just something that is going to happen 100% eventually.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no way of stopping that. So it's hard for me to understand why somebody would not at least say, okay, well, I know that's going to happen, but at least I want it to keep looking the same way.
Right.
Which was
which is
what would the
Which
overlay
was
Which is what the
what-
overlay does, right?
Right, exactly.
I think there may be, and again, I was not at any of the town hall meetings, so I don't know that this is the case. But I think there's a misunderstanding that an overlay basically opens the door for anybody to do what they want, which quite the opposite.
Right.
It allows you to put a set of rules as to what can and cannot happen.
In the future, if
In
it
the
does happen.
future.
And that was one of the things that urban planners, that the Able City did say. It might not happen in the next 1 to 3 to 4 years. You know, Vanessa Perez and Ruben have been very adamant that they respect the wishes of the residents, so they won't allow a zoning change to happen. But both of them are up for re-election, and so if they win their seats, they'll be there for another 4 years. So that property will be protected, or the zoning will be protected for at least another 4 years. But what happens after that?
So does this need to go to a vote, or
No, it just needed to be decided on by the residents. So now the issue
using
is,
what mechanism? I mean, decided how?
well, decided that, okay, the majority of them were in favor of it. Let's get together and start coming up with some plans. It needed to go to council for a vote because the council member of the district, and this can go for any district in town. It's not just a Del Mar issue. It can go for any district.
Sure.
The residents would say, you know what, we do agree. We want to have this insurance, you know, to make sure that it's kind of like an insurance plan. So at that point, the council member votes that we're going to start working on rules. But because the constituents said, no, we don't want this, then Councilman Gutierrez just said, well, you know, we're just not going to move forward with it.
Ultimately, unfortunately, for some of those people that don't want to accept the fact that this is going to change, is I don't think legally, since there have already been some exceptions made and some zoning changes done, I don't know that it could stand a challenge. If I were to buy a property there and say, hey, I'm going to make it into another coffee shop or into a lawyer's office. Well, no, you can't because the zoning, well, you've already done it. So I don't know that it would
Yeah, and
prevent me from doing it.
And let me just mention that because there's no overlay now, what happens is that if a zoning request does go through, you know, for a property change, there are no rules.
No rules.
No rules now because there's no overlay. So now
could make a
they can have another
5-story,
5-story.
yeah.
It could be LED. It could be completely modern,
then the
you know,
consensus of those-
industrial-looking
Yeah.
facade.
So then the consensus of those residents is that that's okay then?
I
Well,
think maybe
So
they.
that the vocal minority are the ones that would like an overlay, but they just didn't win?
It sounds like the residents don't
They're not
want
quite
any
understand.
change.
They don't want anything to
They
They
change.
don't want any
Yeah,
change
yeah.
whatsoever.
So
They
let's
want the
just keep
cars
it
to
mute.
stop driving through
But if
there.
that's the case, then they would have been in favor of the overlay, if I'm
That's-
understanding things correctly.
That's
Right,
what I.
exactly.
So
because
I don't think anybody. I don't think some people understood this. the
Understood.
way-
They had to have understood this. I mean, it just sounds to me like they're okay if there are changes.
I mean, now what
We have
is going to
comments in the
happen is
back.
that they're going to have to fight every zoning if they find out, and there will be
Yeah.
zoning fights because when you do have a request for a zoning change, those
that's
residents need to be
It's open to public.
right, and they need to have things posted and
Comments,
things
yeah.
like that. So now residents are going to have to every single time just make sure that they fight tooth and nail to make sure that that zoning request doesn't go through. But in the time that it does, if there is an instance, it's going to be open to whatever. Because
Well,
there are
I-
no rules.
I think that like ultimately
Ultimately with the protection of the current council members that are saying nothing, we're not going to allow anything
Right.
to
for
happen.
now.
For now.
For now, while they're in office.
Yeah.
But that's
Good
not
luck trying to
forever.
hold that up in court.
Well, when you have Del Mar, Del Mar's very like it's a main artery and like and not that area, but closer to the loop. It's very commercial, and so like to keep that stretch just completely residential.
I don't think you can stop that from happening.
Yeah, exactly.
I
Very
just
difficult.
don't see
Yeah,
it.
and like Able said, the Able City said, it's going to happen. Whether it happens in 15 years, 20 years,
It
it's going to
is.
happen.
It is.
you
So
know?
why don't you put some set of guidelines in that at least will keep the look of it? But if what you're trying to do is protect your homestead and knowing that I don't want anything to change because this is where I live and I don't want the the thing to change. Unfortunately, while I sympathize with the feeling, I don't think you can.
All right.
Yeah.
It's up there.
Okay.
Well, when we come back, a war thousands of miles away is causing a different type of battle on college campuses all across the country. The sights, sounds, and recap from those protests after the break. Welcome back to Beyond the Headlines. More than 2,000 arrests have been made stemming from protests over the Israel-Hamas war. From focal points like UCLA and Columbia to schools in the South to schools in the Midwest and to the Ivy Leagues in the Northeast, heated confrontations have been seen from coast to coast. Pro-Palestinian protesters across the country have advocated for the end of the war and claim a disproportionate response from Israel. Meanwhile, supporters of Israel point to October 7th when Hamas militants killed more than 1,000 people and took more than 250 hostages as a necessary offensive. Schools in the Lone Star State were not prepared for the protests, with protests popping up in Austin, Dallas, and Houston, but that was only the beginning. Since then, demonstrators have popped up nationwide with clashes between supporters of both sides advocating for their cause. And that's our next discussion this morning. College campuses historically have been a site for protests throughout the decades at different times of our history in this country. I can't remember protests this large since, Black Lives
The
Matter.
60s?
No, but I'm saying, well, you're right, on college campuses.
He can't
it's
remember.
60s.
You might,
Yeah,
but the 60s.
No, but on campuses,
We
yeah,
don't
maybe
remember
the 60s, you're right. But, as far as the scale, Black Lives Matter, I don't know, but this is big. It's been a big story, and now.
So are we going to talk about the protest, or are we going to talk about the premise of the protest? Because
Well, it
I think
depends.
you have,
It's hand in
I don't know how you separate the two, but, in my role as a parent, I have often had these discussions with my young adult children now, and particularly because they come from a generation where you're encouraged to
Speak your mind.
speak your mind and do all those things, which I think it's great. But I've always told them, get educated about what it is that you're protesting.
Yeah.
And make sure you know what it is that you're advocating for before you join any kind of demonstration. Because if all you're doing is following the crowd, you're doing a disservice not only to the protest itself, but you're missing an opportunity to make a change. And so
But this is a lot bigger than the protests. The protests are big. It's been, a story. But, Sergio, there's a lot of politics behind this as well. Then now we're hearing, agitators may be part of these protesters. So it's not even people that are protesting the war. And so it's just become this whole other thing, aside from the politics behind it, because you have a president who says, okay, you could protest, just don't be violent. Of course. But he's also been criticized for his, on both sides, for lack of support for Israel or for too much support. So there's just so many aspects of this.
It's extremely complex, but I think that everybody can agree that nobody is in favor of Palestinians. Innocent Palestinians who are being used as a human shield by Hamas, the real enemy.
Exactly.
To be slaughtered by Israel. And I think that Prime Minister Netanyahu has been, se le ha pasado la mano in terms of he is a right-wing sort of military kind of guy. And it's a complex situation. Israelis have lived under constant threat and terrorist attacks since its inception in the 1950s, So, but I think that right now it's interesting because I think that this is a very bad time for this to happen to Biden. In that a lot
I don't think he's got to win. He can't win this. He can't win this issue because, first of all, it's an issue that liberals have created this environment where everybody's a victim. And so they have been pushing this agenda, and now they're stuck with it. And the president is going to have to walk a very fine line as to how do you
It's
handle? And so I don't think he can win. I don't think he's going to make everybody happy. I don't think he's got an out on this.
It's a threat. Right when he's facing Trump in November, the left, the hard left is saying, hey, we demand you support us. You support these images. And so you have a lot of people, I mean, these are college students ultimately, and they're ultimately college students in elite universities in Columbia and UT.
I don't think you can underestimate the number of non-students that are involved in this.
Well, yeah, but you have people that are okay. We empathize with the Palestinians and everything, but then they see the chaos and the violence and the chants. A lot of it is really vicious,
anti-Semitic,
and stuff. And so the left is saying, Biden, give us your stamp of approval. And if he does that, you're going to alienate a lot of people who are looking at these young people, saying, man, like this is just way over the top. They're advocating like for death to Zionists and like all of this just really extreme rhetoric that is not helpful. And so ultimately, I mean, you want like, hey, guys, like seriously, like you want to help Trump win? Just keep these images of chaos and violence and lack of restraint and law and order going, and it's gonna turn off a lot of people that might have voted for Biden. They're like, no, like the Democrats endorse this. And so, I mean, it's a horrible situation for Biden to be in, because ultimately he does agree, and he has been very forceful with Netanyahu. He's like, hey, man, you're going overboard in targeting.
But what business do we
all,
have telling other countries how to defend themselves?
Well, but if you pay for their military,
if you think about what happened at the Twin Towers, that wasn't sexual violence the way Hamas performed on these poor women and children.
It was horrible.
So how do you tell another leader, hey, back off? Would the United States want us?
When you directly compare conflicts in the past, historically, Pearl Harbor, how many Americans died in Pearl Harbor? Do you remember?
3,000.
3,000 or 4,000, right? How many died in Japan as a result of that? Okay.
Thousands.
Hundreds of thousands. Was that proportionate? The attack on the Twin Towers. How many Americans were killed during the attack? How many did we kill in retaliation? And so, whose business is it? Why is it our business? And I know we pay for it, but where's this moral high ground that we come with when we decide, okay, you shouldn't defend yourself that bad, that hard, just enough to push them away? Why? Israelis have been in this. You talk about the 1950s. They've been there for 4,000 years. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. This is not from the 1950s.
Well,
and so
they did.
They have occupied.
They did create a state where
you.
Palestinians lived, and Palestinians were sort of shoved into
the
Gaza.
Israelis were already there.
Yeah,
they
but
were already
not in a like this is our country and.
I need to let Mindy come in here because she hasn't said anything at all, Mindy.
I know. No, I'm listening to both of you guys, and I know that this is, it all stems down to who's right in this particular issue. My concerns are the students who are finding themselves in the middle of this. I feel as a parent, who has a senior who's about to leave for college. I've always told him, and my older son that you speak up, and when you have a feeling about something, yes, absolutely. But there's so many students there that are scared now, whose parents are paying for them to get an education. And I agree with you, get an education so that you could, further help in your way. But there's kids there right now that are trying to finish up a spring semester, that are trying to graduate.
There's kids that could care less about what's going on in Israel.
That's right. They just want to pass their
They just want to pass.
No,
and
right.
I feel for their safety. I feel for the parents' anguish and anxiety as to what's happening with their kid in the middle of all of this. And I just, as much as it yes, protest and speak your mind, make it peaceful, of course.
Yeah.
Did it have to be on a college campus where there are kids there trying to just get a
Minnie's gonna have the
college
last word
degree?
on this, and you know what? I mean, they've canceled commencement exercises.
Yeah.
They've canceled, they've gone, have had to go online, and so that's exactly to your
Yeah.
point. These poor kids that have nothing to do with any of this are suffering.
And they started
and
their
the parents.
freshman year online because it was COVID 4 years ago. So they started their freshman year online. They're ending their senior year online for some of
All
those
right,
campuses.
And we'll end
so.
with that. When we come back,
Yeah.
it's the one thing our panelists cannot stop thinking about. Stay with us. All right, welcome back to Beyond the Headlines. Time for the one thing our panelists cannot stop thinking about. Sergio.
Thank you, Ruben. I have a great book of the month selection. This one's a banger. It's by Steve Cole, a very famous author. And it's about Saddam Hussein, our buddy Saddam Hussein, our lifelong enemy, and how the invasion of Iraq, like what led up to it. And they talk about specifically, like, for example, the CIA supporting Saddam in his war against Iran. But then Iran-Contra broke, and they found out that the CIA was also helping Iran, like they were helping both sides. So it opens up your eyes to a lot of like what the U.S. obviously has done in the region, and also Saddam, obviously an evil man. You get his sons come out, Uday and Qusay, remember those two?
Yeah.
They make
Forgot
an
about all that.
appearance, ultra-violent, crazy.
Interesting.
And then it goes into the Bush years and the weapons of mass destruction and how they thought that he did have them. And it also explains the history of his real efforts to create weapons of mass destruction. So it's a really, really fascinating
What's it
read.
called again? The
It's
Achilles
called
Trap?
the Achilles Trap.
Achilles Trap.
Yes,
Yeah.
by Steve Cole.
Okay.
Mindy.
Sounds good. Okay. Well, you called it, Ruben, when you
Yeah.
said that my one thing this week was going to be my new podcast. Yay! So I just launched it last week, and we had a great episode with Dr. Tyler King. We were talking about anti-obesity medications and what he's trying to do on city council to get them approved by insurances for city employees. And just wanted everybody to know that this is a passion of love for me. Been wanting to do a podcast for quite some time. And basically, it's just a 30-minute unfiltered conversation about a topic that just kind of merits a little bit more in-depth look and conversation. So just want everybody to know we're going to be uploading it to our KGNS website, KGNS YouTube channel every Monday. So be on the lookout for that on social media as well. Yay.
Cool.
Please.
Bucket list item checked. Big fan of Ann and Nancy Wilson, and I had been wanting to see them live for a long time, and I got the bonus of watching Cheap Trick as well.
Wow.
This was in San Antonio, and
That's a lot of people.
It was packed, the Frost Center, on a Wednesday night.
Wow. What's your favorite heart song?
Dug and Butterfly is my favorite
Okay.
heart song that nobody knows.
It's
was
like
gonna
a
say-
B-side.
It is a B-side,
I'm gonna play it right
but that is my one
Not that any
favorite
of the
song.
younger people know what a B-side is. But
On the B-side of
It's
the
on
record.
the B-side of the record.
Yeah.
okay,
Awesome.
all right. So I can't stand two-way highways. Like as I'm driving, I'm always paranoid
with you on
about
that
what's going to
one.
happen.
I'm with
this
you.
side.
Somebody's coming on.
That's Highway
Yeah,
15.
so let's check
Highway
this out. So
59.
this person here in Oregon, they're thinking, okay, I'm going to pass this guy up, right? I see that truck. Well, let me try it anyway, right? So, the Oregon State Police posted this, and we're going to see how exactly this turns out. Anybody want to take a guess?
Oh my gosh. I hope.
here we go.
I just hope he moves
He's
in
going
time.
left.
He's going to get sideswiped.
Whoa.
And avoid, he actually did get sideswiped, and the other 18-wheeler obviously almost
That could have been
fell
so
off
much
the road. But look, he
worse.
does get sideswiped. You see him.
Yeah, I know, but it could have been so
No,
much
I know.
worse.
Yes,
obviously.
absolutely. But how in your right mind do you think you're going to make that pass?
Oh my gosh.
I mean, I don't know. Don't these cars have alarms that say, don't pass, don't pass?
Common sense.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Common sense doesn't
Wow,
necessarily.
common sense. I think that's been gone for a while.
Oh my gosh.
All right,
Yeah,
well.
but I'm with you. I don't like those highways
No, I
either.
can't stand two.
Yeah.
So we can't say Happy May the 4th anymore because that was yesterday?
That was yesterday, but we could say Happy
yeah.
Cinco de Mayo.
Cinco de Mayo,
Oh,
that's right.
Cinco de Mayo.
We
That's
should have had a whole
right.
conversation about
We can have a whole conversation about Cinco de Mayo.
Yeah, because we know how you
and
feel
why
about
you
that.
celebrate-
be celebrating it.
Yeah, the
It's an
history.
American holiday. It's an American holiday. It's not a Mexican holiday.
Yeah, it's the
Well, it
battle
is,
of
but not a
the-
It is,
major
but it's
Right,
not.
exactly. Okay, well,
Anyway,
thank you all very
let's
much. Thanks for watching, all of you, and just have a blessed rest of your Sunday.